We're live, so please don't swear. Good morning, welcome to this session on Digital First. We're going to look at how we put it into practice. We've heard over the last few conferences and few years about this change that's been fed through. We're going to look today in more detail of how we put it into practice on the water, and by doing that we're going to look at action mapping, some application by students on a variety of different courses. And how they're going to implement that as they go through their journeys. So my name's Graham Stones. I'm a trainer across a variety, all the RWA sitting down schemes really. If it's motorboats, powerboats, jet skis or a dinghy and you can sit in it, I'm an instructor or examiner across those. If it's standing up, I tend to do it for pleasure rather than for work.
And yeah, myself, Joe Wallington, also an instructor and an instructor trainer, more sail and shore-based side. So we're going to be like a slightly rubbish double act today. Graham's going to start and then change up to me in the middle and then back to Graham to finish things off, hopefully.
Cool. Thank you. It's working. So we're going to have a look at in the next sort of 45-50 minutes, a little bit about where we're at with the direction of travel that we've been on for the last couple of years and where we're at the moment. We're going to have a look at just a reminder of the APEM structure, which has come into some courses and it's feeding into more. And then we're going to look, as I said, about how we teach that and what, if anything, has actually changed in what we need to cover on the water. I can see some people making notes. This is being recorded, so you'll be able to catch up on it after the session online. So if you're busy scribbling notes, feel free, but just you might not need to. Okay, what I want to do first of all is just to ask a few questions and get a feel for where our audience is at. If you've got in your pocket, on your arm, or in your bag under your chair, something which you could use on a boat to give you your position in a format we can use on the boat, so a lat and long, a position on a chart, on an app or something like that. Can you stand up? Okay. If you've got more than one device that will do that, put your arm in the air. This is going to be pretty easy, actually, isn't it? You can, if everyone takes 4 seats to the left and then sits down, then the camera will be able to see us all. Grab a seat, guys. Cool. So assuming you take them devices on the boat, you may be using them. There's probably not a lot in here that's going to be new to you. What we need to think about is what we deliver to our students and the way that changes, because what we do in reality when we're boating may be different to what we've been teaching. So let's have a look at where we are at the moment with the changes and the regulations and things like that. So as we know, a few years ago, the UKHO said they were going to phase out printed charts. Pretty quickly, they changed the date on that and extended it a little bit because there was a lot of panic that we didn't have a solution. So they've now said that they're going to print paper charts, raster charts, until at least 2030, while there's a demand. At that point, IMRA were probably rubbing their hands together going, great, we've got a lot of business here. But not too long ago, as we know, that they said that they were going to phase out, probably for the same reason as UKHO, the cost of printing the charts and the number that they actually sell is very different to what it used to be. So they announced recently, as probably most of us are aware, that by the end of this year, they're going to do the same. Okay. Not too long ago, so in November, the MCA put out the small vessel ECS performance standard, which runs alongside an MGN, and that's effective from the 1st of June. So that really applies to us if we're on a commercial vessel, and there's a lot of stuff in there. If anyone's read it and understands all of it, you can do a session after this one. There's stuff in there that applies to vessels over and vessels under 15 meters and what we're required to carry in terms of navigation equipment. The UKHO are following all this stuff. They're leading a working group which involves a lot of other organisations like themselves under the IHO umbrella, to try and find a solution that works and is cost effective and practicable for small vessels under 24 meters. So the sort of boats that we're in. Because we've had all these changes put out there, but actually to implement what they want at the moment is pretty difficult. to go and get the right kit at a cost that we can afford. So we're at the bottom here, sailing along and trying to enjoy ourselves on the water and not spend a fortune doing it. What we've got is these people who are influencing that. We've got the MCA who are dictating what we do on UK boats, whether it's coded boat, UK flag boat or whatever. We've got the IHO who are also having an influence on that, particularly if we're more in the commercial and we're running Ectis and things like that maybe. A bit nearer to us, we've got the UKHO who are obviously producing the chart, and what they decide obviously affects us. A little bit nearer to us, and we're involved probably a bit more, is the manufacturers who rely on us buying the kit, but they're relying on what the people higher up the hill say in terms of what equipment we can carry. They're relying on people like the UKHO, allowing them to be able to produce charts and things at a reasonable price. And then somewhere in the middle, we've got the RYA, who are trying to keep us happy and push all that lot back up the hill and make it realistic for us. There's quite a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts, and every time we stand up here and do this at a conference, something else has changed. So what we're going to look at is where we are at the moment and what we can do then. This will affect more people than others in the room, depending on the sort of boat you're running. And they've put this out, and actually there's not a lot of equipment you could go and buy and put on your 38-foot sail training vessel or whatever it is we're running in an RWA centre that would be cost effective, fits on the boat physically, and you would not want, and you would want to be able to, you could use at a reasonable cost. So we're looking at paying £2,000 to £3,000 a year maybe just for the charts that meet the requirements for this standard. So we've got a lot to deal with and a lot to try and work with. Okay, but these things are evolving. The equipment manufacturers are doing their bit so that hopefully these things can filter down and we've got reasonable solutions. Sorry. Okay. So those that have been to the conference before will have heard this. Those that have read the RWA magazines, seen all the stuff that goes out on social media and stuff. Digital first. What it's about is trying to implement and the effect of some of them changes on the way that we navigate and we manage a boat on the water, and how we prepare for, I guess, those cut-off dates that we've got somewhere in the sand when we won't be able to buy paper charts. And actually, it makes our life easier. If we can get the equipment to do all the hard work for us, the heavy lifting, all the mathematical calculations we've spent long times in classrooms working out, if that can do it for us, we can enjoy our time on the water a lot more and probably spend more time doing other stuff which is more relevant, making seaman-like decisions. The big thing to remember is it's not digital only. We're not getting rid of the paper at the moment. It's not digital always. There may be times when it's more relevant and safer maybe to revert to the stuff we've been doing previously. And hopefully we're not digital never. Well, we can't be. Everyone stood up when they said they've got something in their pocket, so we're obviously using it at some point. Okay. So what are we looking to use that stuff for? It's the hard work, I guess. Like I said, we've historically spent a lot of time on a course working out technical drawings, working out long-handed maths to work out have we got enough water to get in and out of somewhere, doing technical drawings to work out which direction to point the boat. And actually, a lot of this stuff can do it for us a lot simpler and a lot more accurately. If we've got the right stuff in the right sensors and things going into it, it can receive, it can process, and it can transmit information a lot more accurately and a lot faster than we can. Whether it's a position, whether it's depth, whether it's our heading, speed, stuff like that. It can do the mathematical calculations, as I said, and answer the questions based on that data that we need at our hands as we're boating to make the decisions we need to make in order to get to the right place. So whether it's just giving us SOG and COG on the screen, whether it's doing MARPA stuff on the radar, whether we've got depth alarms, things like that. And it can present that information in a variety of ways, including those alarms, as I mentioned, whether we've got vectors on the screen, a rolling road with cross-track distance, cross-track error showing for us, It's given us waypoint arrival alarms, anchor dragging alarms, things like that. And it can do all that heavy work for us, as I said. Excuse me. So it's doing the scientific bit, if you like. The bit that we've spent a lot of time maybe struggling over, getting our head around and working out how we do it. In order to do that, we need the right sensors and the right data coming in for that system to be able to do it. We need to ask it the right questions and allow it to make the right calculations for us. And particularly important are the accuracy and the calibration of those things. So it's about having the right stuff on the boat, the right sensors on the boat. It's about having the right connections and having that well maintained as well. We've got the right voltage going to it. We've got cables that aren't chafed and worn and in damp places and things like that. And understanding as well what happens if we take one of those sensors away and lose it. So if we lose our heading sensor, for example, what happens? Not only can the boat not steer itself with the autopilot, we're going to lose one of the vectors on the screen. We're going to lose the ability, when we're stopped, to have the chart orientated north up, because it will only do head up on the radar, for example, if it hasn't got heading sensors. So it's about our students understanding the right sensors that need to be on there, the right information it needs coming in order to be able to do them calculations. And equally, if they're fitting that kit to the boat, they're buying the right kit to go on it as well. And we see this particularly on the small vessels that we use on some of our courses. I'm thinking the power boats and things. We might fit a radar, but if we hadn't fitted a heading sensor, it's not going to give us all the answers we want it to do. It's not going to. We're probably only going to get 30% of the functionality of that radar if we've not got the right sensors and the right data coming in for it, as an example. What does that allow us to do if we've got all that doing the right stuff? As humans, it allows us to do the artistic bit, the seamanship stuff, the sailing, enjoy it, look at the scenery instead of having our head in the chart table. We still need to be able to do that stuff, if there's any problems, and recognizing it's not doing the right things when we've asked it the questions and it's not giving us the answers we want. But if we can get it doing the right stuff, it allows us more time to do the seamanship type stuff. So using this stuff, we can do the artistic bit. The tech stuff can do the heavy lifting, the scientific bit, the calculations that we spent ages working out and teaching students, banging our head in the classroom, getting students to try and understand and remember for the fourth time of telling them how to do a course to steer or a secondary port calculation, things like that, which these things give us straight away on the screen. What we need to make sure is that whatever we're doing, however we're using the kit, it's robust. We're asking the right questions to get the right answers. We know what the answers should look like, and we're getting it to do the right stuff. We're using trustworthy data particularly when we start to move into using apps and things like that, away from the stuff that's bolted to the boat. It's using trustworthy data, trustworthy sources for that sort of stuff. If we let it do the heavy lifting and ask the right questions, we can focus on the artistic bit and enjoy the time afloat more. This is kind of where we're at the moment, really. If we look at the commercial stuff, if we're on a big ship, we're going to have something like that. We're going to have more than one of those. We're going to have at least 2 of those because we need a backup. If we're running an SV ECS system, well, there aren't really them on the market, really, unless we fit a downgraded version of that. So if you try and Google it, you'll probably not come up with much, apart from an AI picture. This is probably where we're going to get to. In the moment, we're in the middle somewhere. We've got apps on our phones, we've got apps on our watches, we've still got the paper charts, we've still got the almanac, we've got apps on tablets, and we've got things that are bolted to the boat, chart plotters, radars, instruments, things like that. What we're going to look at next is we're going to move on to follow a few boaters on some courses and some journeys that they're going to follow. I'm going to hand over to Joe, I think.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, hopefully that's kind of set the scene again, if you guys, so that you're kind of up to date as to where we are in this journey that is, as Graham has mentioned, is ever changing. And to kind of move forward now, we're going to use a combination of these fairly stereotypical scenarios that we've kind of selected from each scheme, interweave some of the shore-based delivery into this as well. And using these, we will follow through with our APEM format. So APEM's been around for a good few years now, Generally, show of hands, people happy and using APEM across the schemes? Perfect. There's some great material out there if it's still something that you kind of want to weave into your delivery. And in fact, at the end of this, we have some QR codes that signpost you to bits of this. But obviously, we haven't got hours here today, and we could definitely discuss this for a long time. So we'll take any questions at the end, but we'll use those two pieces to kind of add some structure. So with the APEM side, I'm sure you'll agree that those in the room that are both shore-based and practical instructors, whilst we cover all 4 sections in both, certainly the shore-based, the day skipper and the yachtmaster theory courses are where we're focusing more on the appraisal and the plan. And then once our students have done that and they go out onto the water, they're going to put that into practice through the execution and the monitor. And again, I'm sure you've seen that most of the changes that we're seeing in the shore-based side are within the day skipper. That's not to say that the yachtmaster won't eventually change, but it's a bit more complex for us to do so with the MCA engagement. And ultimately, there's not a massive team of us that can change the world all at once. But certainly the fundamentals here of making sure we are digital first, both in the classroom and on board any of the vessels, can be run through both the day skipper and the yachtmaster scheme without issue. And once I've handed back to Graham, we'll kind of talk about the yachtmaster and the advanced powerboat assessments and what our examiners should be looking for, and therefore how we should be preparing our students for those. So to start with, as I say, just to kind of set the scene, this one is obviously a family. Ash and his family are taking out a small open boat, a rib in this scenario. So again, in that appraisal phase, just some examples where we can make sure that we're focusing on that digital first mentality. And obviously the big one, not just here, but anybody who's going to use the water needs to be looking at and interpreting and understanding the weather, don't they? And I think that's a really nice one to start with. Just a rough show of hands. Who is still getting up early in the morning to either tune into the VHF or listen to the shipping forecast before going out on the water for the day? One, yeah, couple. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I love it, the romance of it, but realistically, if we did a show of hands for who's Googling the weather as they walk down the pontoon, that's where we're at, isn't it? And really through all of these sections, all we're asking in both the shore-based and the practical is to start tying them together a little bit more. You know, there's definitely been elements historically that practical instructors we go through the motions of on the boat, knowing that realistically, if we weren't teaching, we might not be doing those same things. So it's about closing that gap and really showing our students what we do and showing them where they should be looking, but most importantly, where they shouldn't be looking. Because if we don't, they're going to use the internet, aren't they, when they leave us? And if we haven't signposted them and shown them the pros and cons of where they should be obtaining these sources of information, we are going to eventually see problems with them kind of self-discovering, maybe not as official or trusted sources. And again, with the syllabuses, nothing has changed. We still need our students to obtain a forecast. They still need to get that from a trusted or an official source. They need to be able to interpret it. And importantly, they need to understand it and how that's going to impact their day and any changes that they may or may not need to make to their plan. So again, as I'm sure most of us have got on those devices that we now know we've all got in our pockets, it's about this, isn't it? And it's about making sure that our students understand where they can obtain weather from, where is potentially better sites and online versions of the weather to get it from. There's definitely certain apps and bits and pieces that are great and some that aren't. So making sure both in the, you know, across all the schemes really, that they are obtaining the correct information and understanding the differences that they might see. We've all probably got our favorite apps, haven't we, that we use and that we trust, and there's nothing wrong with our students building up that knowledge as well, as long as we've shown them where this data is kind of coming from originally. So, you know, and again, just emphasizing to them that yes, that we can signpost them to those places and that they are going to be able to obtain and understand that forecast. Certainly the big thing is making sure that they implement or they change their plan accordingly, isn't it? It's not just being able to recite the forecast. Yes, they need to understand it, but it is that change into their day on the water. So just switching examples, this is more of a kind of Leah being a commercial skipper, or the skipper of this vessel, with some guests on a charter, by the looks of it, from a well-known charter company. And again, the other big one that certainly comes up a lot is the tides. Making sure that we're able to demonstrate to our students that yes, they can obtain them from the almanac, and there's still absolutely nothing wrong with that. But again, I won't keep making you put your hands up, but if I asked you, do you look in the almanac every day, or are you Googling them as you walk down the pontoon? We're definitely seeing a lot of people now referring to them online or getting them via something, or one of the many apps that has them. But similar with the weather, I'm sure you're well aware that there's definitely some better tidal predictions out there from some websites and some sources, and there's some that you can quite easily and quickly stumble across, which are definitely wrong. So our job as instructors, both in the classroom and practically, to make sure we are demonstrating these things to our students, because the same as the weather, if we don't, they're just going to go and find it themselves, and finding the wrong information is where the risks or the problems may well come from. So again, similarly, making sure we are covering the different sources, and as Graham was alluding to, allowing our electronics to do some of that heavy lifting. I'm sure we've all been in the classroom with students debating the last 0.1 meter of tide on the tidal curve and getting them to sharpen the pencil and draw another line that's slightly more parallel. Does it really matter? Is that last 0.1 meter going to make any difference to their day on the water? And if that's the learning outcome that they leave with, rather than the importance of sticking a meter of clearance on because of all the variants that we can't do anything about, actually that's the impact that we want for our student, isn't it? And not letting them get upset or frustrated over that last bit of mathematics. It isn't a maths course. We just have to be able to use maths to get the answers that we need, and importantly linking it back to what the impact is on the day on the water, and that student remaining safe on whichever vessel they're on. And again, the similar actions for us apply. Where can we get the information from? When therefore, once they've had the electronics do the heavy lifting, they're still going to come out with the same answers, aren't they? When can they safely get in or out of that harbour? How much depth do they need to anchor in? Where are the hazards going to be, and are they safe to get close or go over them or not? And again, the relationship between the tide and the weather, the wind, for the impact on their day. So again, syllabus wise, nothing has changed here. We're just changing that emphasis to make sure those key takeaway bits are what the student needs for the day on the water. And I always think, how would you use that vessel without the students on? And for most of us, we would be doing this. I think we can agree. So we're just trying to close that gap between the two. And certainly a lot of that will start in the theory side with the shore-based instructors amongst us, obviously working closely if you don't deliver both with the practical side, so that we still get that probably much better and more enhanced tie-in between the two. And again, they are still going to need some of those fundamental knowledges, and it's not that we're going to strip this out, or we're not going to show them or talk about them. It's just where we spend the precious time. The course is only so many hours long, isn't it? And it's just making sure that we are emphasizing the correct bits for the correct amount of time. So rather than spending that hour and a half quibbling over that last 0.1, actually using that time more effectively to get the key points across to them. So again, just a couple more examples, still in the appraisal phase from the motor scheme now. And some of this has already been done for us. The big change that we've seen recently is the customs side, isn't it? I don't know how many of you have attempted to take a boat across to France, but there's a lot of paperwork. That when that first happened, that all came in paper forms that you had to download and print. Most of it now, certainly all the UK ones and most of the French ones, they're all online, aren't they? So it's digital first automatically. Again, it's our job as the instructor to demonstrate and to show our students when they get to that level where they can obtain them, how they work, what they can do, what they can't do, and so on and so forth. So we have actually nicely seen some of this. We've been forced that way as the general population move towards more computer-based and electronics. And again, for us, for the syllabus, nothing has changed. You know, there's always been talk of customs procedures and, you know, coastal states and flag states and such like. So what we're delivering as in the outcome is no different. It's just that we've moved that focus towards that digital first mentality and ensuring in our delivery that we are demonstrating and signposting, in this case, our students to the correct place. And again, you know, with the chart work side, no major changes here. Just, you know, I always think stereotypically at the start of a day skipper course, we traditionally open up training chart 3 and the students quite early on start by looking around and seeing what they can see. We can still do that, but we should also be doing that with some form of electronic charting as well. We're lucky as instructors that the likes of Navionics and Savvy Navi and people gift us these things. Most classrooms now have the ability to screen share, don't they, quite easily. So actually, out of everybody who stood up at the start there, I'm assuming most people have got some sort of charting app on their device. So actually having that kind of initial chart discussion is quite easily done. Sadly, I know we did lose the free web app of Navionics, which was a shame, wasn't it, quite a while ago, but that's nothing to do with us, so there we are. But again, for us, the actions for our students, they're unchanged. They still need to be able to find their way around a chart, identify the charted features correctly, use and understand what an official source of chart is, and assess their voyage accordingly. So making sure, as I've already said, that we are therefore covering the electronic charting side as well. And I think historically, certainly in the classroom, when the changes first came about, we saw it very much as a standalone subject. And I think it's not unfair to say that a lot of instructors bolted in the electronic side just as a kind of 2-hour session or something, you know, at some stage during the week. And I think for me, when I kind of updated my teaching materials, removing that and making sure that it was washed through everything was the kind of starting block for me, really, and enhancing it from there. So definitely move away from that. We've done all the paper stuff. We'll finish off with a bit of electronics. And I think similarly on the boat, you know, historically a lot of people would do all the paper stuff all week on a day skipper practical, and then on the last morning say, yeah, I'm happy with you all now, we can stick a waypoint in and take ourselves back to our home port. And these are the kind of bits that, you know, we want to be moving away from and making sure that we're using that from the first morning. So hopefully a few bits there just on the kind of areas under what we're delivering to our students under the appraisal phase. I'm just going to do a couple more under the planning phase before handing back to Graham, who will talk us through the execute and monitor. This is the big one, isn't it? This is where the questions come up quite a lot, is the course shaping side. So again, student-wise, there's no massive change in what they need to do. They still need to be able to safely navigate their vessel from point A to point B, from their departure to their choice of arrival. So making sure that they have the information to make that informed choice on when and where they're going to depart from. Obviously, that will be slightly scheme dependent, whether that's where to launch the dinghy or at what time to leave their departure harbour. They need to make the correct choice on the destination due to the weather and the tides and the constraints, and obviously be able to calculate when it is safe to arrive there and shape their course accordingly, ideally understanding their kind of maximum cross-track distance or cross-track error along the way. I mean, that's definitely one of the easiest way these days, isn't it, with the electronics to monitor and to project your course forward, is making sure that our students utilize some of these functions that I'm sure we do, but that maybe we haven't kind of spoken about enough with them historically. So again, for us and for them, no major change there. You know, it's just making sure that they have got all that information from the electronics that allows them to make that correct and informed choice, and both on when to depart and when to arrive, and have been shown and demonstrated a lot of those extra features within the electronics that we'll all have on board our boats that will make that easier for them. So how we'll actually deliver that, or what we can then teach them? Well, again, there's nothing drastic here, but ensuring that they are well aware of the information that they're going to see and that they can enhance on the electronic side. Certainly some more focus on the vectors and the lengths of vectors and the difference that between the speed over ground and the speed through the water, and the different vectors that our students are going to see. And as I've already alluded to, that the sort of cross-track error or maximum cross-track distance, I think, is another vital one that we should be putting some emphasis on, to allow our students to not only be able to plan and shape that course initially, but as Graham will talk a bit more about, the monitoring of that, obviously, as they're going through the execution. How many people use the cross-track distance out of interest? Do you find that it's fairly good, isn't it? I mean, it's pretty fail-safe if it's been planned from the planning side and it's set in. Having that kind of corridor there is fantastic, and works really well. And again, I think just something that has been probably a little bit underused, again, with the vector lengths, just making sure that emphasis is there on, yeah, it's lovely to see that vector, but the fact that you can adjust it for time is a massive thing. Once the student understands that, that puts a lot of what we would historically doing on paper, EPs and courses to steer, straight on the screen for us, doesn't it? And radar is obviously a big one. We've been pushing it over the last couple of years. We've certainly brought a little bit more radar knowledge down into the kind of day skipper level, whereas before the emphasis was obviously heavy at Yachtmaster. Again, most training boats, I know it's not a requirement yet, but we are seeing most centres now having a vessel fitted with radar, and even some of the much smaller boats are coming with it. So therefore, and certainly in the charter side, so therefore it is important that our day skipper level students have a more enhanced understanding, and it's getting so much easier to use, isn't it? The modern sort of Raymarine or Garmin radar sets. I know you love a Garmin one, don't you, Graham? You prefer them, but they are, getting much, much easier to use. And again, if we don't demonstrate these things to our students, what are they going to do when they first get on that charter boat that first weekend with radar? If we haven't shown them, they're going to turn it on, aren't they? Or it's going to turn on automatically, depending on how it's been wired, and they're potentially then got equipment there that they don't understand or they haven't been shown. So I think, again, just making sure that we are talking about it. Hopefully you're on a boat that's got it, and that makes it a lot easier, doesn't it, when we're talking about radar. But over the years, and it's still all available and we can signpost you to it, we've put a lot of information out with the RYA about teaching radar on vessels that haven't got it fitted. So you can certainly fill that gap if you are still on a vessel that routinely hasn't got a more modern radar set. And again, the kind of syllabus actions, they're unchanged. They still need to be able to identify what radar can do for them, and maybe more importantly, what radar can't do for them, and where it comes into its benefits. And as Graham mentioned, that not every boat with that radar might give the same data, depending on what sensors and inputs and how these things have been configured. So obviously being used for the navigational side, the weather enhancements, and obviously the collision regs and the IRPCS side of things. So yeah, nothing too drastic in that change. And again, with the modern radars, this was one of the elements of the syllabus that it sort of forced our hand digital first anyway, didn't it? Because those that liked radar, when we saw the more modern sets come out, we naturally see them on smaller boats now, and therefore that's been fantastic for us, because it has pushed us into that way. And that's it from me. Back to Graham, who's going to follow those same bits through, but just now looking at a few examples from the execute and the monitoring phases.
Thank you, Joe. So now we've spent some time in a classroom learning how to do it. We spent time on the dining room table at home planning our voyage. or we've done it as we're walking down the pontoon and we're checking the tides and the weather. We now need to go boating. So let's have a look at a few things that those guys that we've just introduced are going to be doing through their journey, through their journeys that they've been already planning to do. So back to our guys in the dinghy who are on a bit of a trip. They're going for a little day sail somewhere. In some ways, these people have probably been digital first before a lot of us on the bigger boats, because they haven't got a chart table. They're probably not going to spend £50 on a Reed's Nautical Almanac, and they're probably not going to spend £50 on a folio chart. They've probably been using the apps in their pocket for a lot longer than we've been doing on bigger boats to check the tides, even if it was just off the BBC website, checking the weather, places like that, and checking where they're going to go on those sort of apps. So they're probably ahead of us on the first two stages. Things that they're going to do when they're out on the water and consider. They might need to use a shore contact if they're going on a decent length trip from A to B, not just sailing around on the lake or just off the beach where they set off from. They might have a checklist that they want to set up before they leave. Have they got all the right kit on the boat? Is it stored in the right place? Have all the crew got the stuff that they need to do? Sorry. And consider as well what they're going to do when they're on the water to stay in touch with those shore contacts. I'm sure a lot of you have come across the Safe Tracks app or heard about it. Brilliant for those sort of people. We can set up a checklist and we can customize it with a checklist to check and tick off before we go on our voyage. We can tell it where we're setting off from, a waypoint that we're going via, and where we're going to finish our trip. We can assign a shore contact out of the contact list in our phone and notify them with a link that they can then use to see our progress along that trip. It's great. Whether you're on a dinghy or a big boat or even your car going home, it's something that's really simple and really easy to use. It allows group. It's got a group function on there as well. So if there's a number of boats going out at the same time, whether it's a fleet of dinghies, a flotilla of yachts, again, they can set up a similar thing and they can share all that stuff within each other and with the shore contacts as well. And more importantly, for when it doesn't quite go right, it's linked to the Coast Guard as well. So the Coast Guard, if their trip overruns, the person who's assigned as a shore contact will get a message after a set period of time that tells them that that person on the trip hasn't notified the app that they've reached their destination or ended their trip, or they've not extended it because things have overrun a little bit. Within that message, there's a code that they can ring the Coast Guard with, and the Coast Guard can access the details of that trip on their system and see where that person is or where they were when something happened to them, whether it's run out of phone signal, battery went flat, the dinghy's capsized and the mobile phone doesn't work. That gives the Coast Guard a lot more accurate position and place to start their search and rescue. So whether we're in a dinghy or a big boat, this is something brilliant. If you've not looked at it, download it and try it on the way home, unless you don't want people to know that you've stopped. So back to our guys on the yacht. So they're probably doing that as well. What do they need to be doing? So they've got their plan, they've got their route. Something to consider is that a route is not a plan. There's a lot more to a plan than a route, a list of waypoints or something like that. Our plan involves a lot more, whether it's time of departure, all the custom stuff we talked about as well. Once they're underway, what are they going to do? They're going to set up their instruments as aids. They're going to use that along the route to sense check later on when we get into the monitoring part of it. So we're going to have on the screen things like depth, cross-track area or cross-track distance, speed, distance, time to waypoint, that sort of stuff. What do we need to teach them? The value of alarms. The number of boats I go on and do an exam, and there's nothing that's going to tell them when they're about to run aground. Apart from me at the back who says, can we stop? Because it's getting a little bit shallow because they've been two heads down, focused on what they're trying to achieve and wondering where the heck they are on their bit of paper. And actually, they've got in front of them a screen that tells them where they are pretty accurately. And it will also shout at them and tell them if we're about to run aground because we've set a depth alarm. So things like depth alarms, cross-track distance, cross-track error alarms, things like that. Or, the importance of knowing what we need to know as well if we're going to use them is the parameters that we need to set for them alarms or what we're expecting to see along along the trip. How shallow is it going to get? How big is our cross-track distance going to be? That should have all come into our plan. So that when we start to see them numbers on the screen, we understand, are they what I expect to see? Are they bigger or smaller than what I expect to see? Onto our guys on the motorboat. So they've got a nice little route now in their MFD on the boat, and they could have set it up on the boat by doing it just on the boat. They may have pre-prepared it at home on a plotter, on a computer, sorry, not on a plotter, probably not got one of them on a dining table, but we've probably got an app or a tablet on our phone, whether it's Navionics or something like that. We may have some computer software. If we can transfer that onto the boat, onto the stuff on the boat that we're going to have in front of us at the wheel, we may need to be doing that. And we're going to use that then for situational awareness when we get into the monitoring part of it. So things that we need to teach them, the value of using waypoints and routes for situational awareness, not just where we're going, but are we where we think we shouldn't? Are we not where we think we should be? Have we gone off course somewhere and we're about to run aground? We know that before the alarm tells us. We might need to start showing them methods of transferring that from our tablet. We can get very lost with this sometimes on a course, because we might have set our center up all with Android tablets with Navionics on it, and it works brilliantly with our Simrad plotter on our training boat. The student goes away and they've got an Apple device, they've got a Raymarine plotter, and they're using Savvy Navi. And what you've just shown them on the course, and they've spent 5 days getting really good at, suddenly doesn't work when they get to their boat. So there can be some quite intricate ways of doing this and some quite complex. What we need to make our students aware of is that it's possible, but you probably need to use the instructions. And actually for some of it on the boat, you may need to just do it, make it happen. When they get on their boat, they're going to have to learn to do it their way. Otherwise, we'll spend 5 days in a marina working out apps and things like that and telling them they brought the wrong phone and the wrong app and the wrong chart plotter on their boat. It may be that we do it manually. It's sometimes more efficient just to come onto here and put the waypoints back into here, repeat what you've already done on there at home or on the dining table or on the chart table. An important part of that as well is that we've got a backup. What happens when this stops working or this stops working? What happens when the paper chart gets coffee spilt all over it? Have we got a backup to that? Or is that all we've relied on completely and suddenly we've got to start using this? So that backup comes in either place, whether we're doing it the way we've always done it or the way we're hoping to try and do it. Lots of stuff to get into this one. When we move and delve into waypoints a little bit more, we've probably all just scrolled around the screen and put a waypoint here, there, and everywhere. We've now got 2,753 waypoints, numbered 1 to 2,753, which make no sense to you whatsoever if you come back to it a week later, hoping to reuse them. If we can give our waypoints a useful name, put it somewhere where we can verify where it is as we're driving along, next to a buoy, off a headland, entrance to a harbour, something like that, we can confirm when the machine tells us you're at the waypoint, we can look out the window, we can see what it was telling us should be next to us, and see that that's correct. Have we got logical legs? Are we crossing channels in the right way? Are we following the right sort of seamanship stuff with our route? Sometimes with these auto routing things, if we ask it to put a route from A to B, it doesn't put a route where you would logically put it. It will cross the channel at 45 degrees. It will run down the wrong side of the channel. It will cut corners through the corner, through a bend in the channel, something like that. So we've got logical legs. So we might, if we've done it automatically, we might need to come in and edit it a little bit. If we've done it manually, are we thinking about are we getting the route to take us where we would naturally take the boat if we were thinking about it and drawing it on a piece of paper? Or just navigating that sort of route if we were familiar with the area already. Have we got arrival and departure waypoints? It's really no different to what we've been doing on paper charts, where we might put a cross on a chart next to a buoy or at a bend into something and take it somewhere where we can see on the chart, we'll be able to see somewhere next to us. We're going to do the same on the screen. What I've got here is, this is a route off Queen Mary 2. Cruise ship. Now they've been digital first for a long time on that vessel. I doubt they've ever had a paper chart on the bridge. This is a route that takes them from Hamburg to Southampton. It's not miles in comparison to what they do. I think there's about 80 waypoints, something like that. But if we look at them, they're all named next to buoys. A waypoint needs to be somewhere where something happens, whether we change direction, we pass something. We've got a pilot boarding. So there's waypoints in here with pilot boarding points. There's one, I think, somewhere where they change the pilot. They're obviously going from one port control to another. Line up with the TSS, get them pointing in the right direction, disembark the pilot, outside the 12 mile, inside the 12 mile. There's one further down, inside 12 miles, close all discharges, things like that. They've put waypoints in to remind them that they need to do something, not just to change direction, which is where we've traditionally, I would say, used waypoints or put a cross on the chart. They're doing it for everything on here to remind them. It's probably all in their plan as well, their narrative of what they need to do, as well as coming up on the screen with alarms telling them that they're at that point to do something. It's quite a long list, that. I'll not let it all play. But it's quite interesting that, you know, these guys have navigated the way that we're wanting to people do it, and the way we've kind of done it a little bit. This is the way they've done it on big ships forever. Not forever, but certainly on these sort of ships since they were built. If you look at a flight plan for a commercial aircraft, it's probably something similar as well, with the way that they put crosses on where they need to go or need to do something. Let's come back on track. Let's have a look at our guys in the dinghy, in the rib. So while they're out, what they're going to be looking at is some live observations. So they're doing all the other stuff that we've been talking about on the other boats as well. Along the way, they're going to get some live observations, and they're going to compare them against what they were expected to see or what they've calculated, whether it's tidal heights. So it could be a primary thing. We're going to drive past the tidal gauge. Let's have a look what it says as we pass that tidal gauge going out of the river. I was expecting it to be 3. It's 3.4. What difference does that make to what I'm about to do? Do I need to change my plan because I'm seeing something different? Most important bit with that is they need something to compare it against. We can drive past the tidal gauge and see what the height of tide is, but we need to know what we were expecting it to be. Equally, we could have looked on the harbour's website and seen what the tide gauge is on over the sill or something like that. So not just looking at it visually, we could be getting these things from all sorts of places. There's a lot of apps and websites and things now where we can look at the live tidal height in the middle of the Solent or the wind speed and things like that and compare to what we were expecting or had forecast. Let's move on to the monitoring part of it now. So we've done all that great work at the beginning. We're now underway. This is probably the most important bit to ensure that we arrive where we want to arrive in one piece. So still on the rib at the moment. What they're going to do, they've got their route in their plotter because they've not got a chart table. They haven't got anywhere to spread out a paper chart. And for a long time, they've been using these things. They put the route to the screen. They've verified that the position and put in that the position it's given us is correct. And they're going to project where we might be in 6 minutes, in 10 minutes, or in an hour using some vectors on the screen. So if I've got a line which is created from heading and water speed, if we were to draw that on a piece of paper, what would we call it? The end of that line. It's a DR, isn't it? If we had a line that was created on our screen from cog and sog, if we were to draw that position on a chart, what would that be? It's an estimated position, isn't it? And we taught our students on our courses to do a projected EP, for example, so that we can work out, well, actually, I'm going to travel along this line and I'm going to end up there in that amount of time. This thing's doing it for us 10 times a second, way more accurately than you can calculate it on a piece of paper. So if we can use these to help us say, actually, I want to come along this line, but I'm going to be here. I need to alter my course a little bit. Or if I do follow this line, I'm going to end up in shallow water. I need to alter my course a little bit or do something about it. having this sort of information on the screen is really useful. If we've not got a route that we're following, whether it's just a single go-to, and we've not got something on the screen telling us where we're going to be in a set amount of time, we've not got much information to our hands instantly. How quickly could we work that out in our head or on a piece of paper? It's going to take you a fair amount of time to do it on a piece of paper, isn't it? Do that on a small boat where it's wet and there's a lot of other stuff going on, a lot of people asking you questions. This thing does it for us. And that may allow us to alter our plan, alter our routes. This boat was intending to come down here and come this way, but actually he's seen, because he's been monitoring where he is, where he was going, he's looked at the depth. I can cut that corner and I can advance the waypoint and come to this one. I'm using this to make sure I go the right way. I don't end up in shallow water. And so on and so forth. Let's follow our guys on the motorboat. What are they doing? They're verifying their position. So we hear lots of stuff about the issues with, oh, my GNSS, my GPS might lose position. It might be in the wrong place. Most of the places we go, it doesn't happen very often. If it does, it may be because of something wrong with the sensor itself. Poor wiring, poor voltage, something like that. If it's working as it should be, it's probably giving us a pretty good position. Again, probably more accurate than we can work out. What do we want to know? We know where we think we are. We need to just confirm it. The machine knows where it thinks it is. We need to confirm it. And that could be something as simple as turn the radar on the chart overlay, and does everything on the radar match up with the charted objects on the screen? Unless the land's moved, if the radar overlay is over the land in the correct orientation and the correct position, there's a fairly good chance that the boat is where it says it is on the screen. We could be using a compass bearing as we've done previously. We could be lining up a transit visually out the window, and if we can see that on the screen as well, the boat is on that transit that's on the screen shown on the chart, that confirms as well that we're in position. Visual fix, contours, things like that. Again, not a lot's changed from what we've done previously. So our guys in the dinghy, they've got a bit of a more challenge because, again, we've not got a chart table. Things that they could be doing, they've probably got a handheld GPS with a route in it. If we're going somewhere we're not familiar with, we're probably guessing how far offshore we are. We're probably guessing how deep it is. We might need to lift the centreboard up occasionally if it gets a bit shallow. That's our depth sounder, really. But if we've got a route in here and we've got this thing telling us where we should be going, which direction we're going, are we on that course? Are we off that course? We're probably being aware of changing conditions. We might have sailed past the tidal gauge, but that might not be the sort of area that we're sailing in. We're probably looking to see if the weather's changed. We're probably looking to see if there's more tide or less tide. We've got less of that sort of information to our hands. But if we've got something that's telling us where we are, where we think we should be, we're probably heading in the right direction. The guys on the yacht, they don't want to be in this situation. So we need to maintain a lookout by all available means. Nothing's changed there. We need to obtain early warning of potential risks. Nothing's changed there. What can we use the kit for? AIS. We need to understand the difference between the data that comes from a big ship compared to a small boat going slowly, and the lag in that transmit data. The fact that one updates every second, one updates maybe by the minute, and therefore what we see on the screen may not be 100% accurate. If we're using it on an app, probably even less accurate because it takes time to go into the sky and come back as well. So the limitations of AIS as well. If we've got radar on the boat, can we use it? Do we understand what the Doppler feature means and what that's telling us? Guard zones, target tracking. It'll do a lot of stuff for us that previously we've taught people to do manually with plotting sheets and things. Press the button and it'll do it pretty quickly for you, more accurately. And it does a lot of it automatically, which means we've got more time to have our head out the boat and making them decisions that we talked about earlier. Okay, that was a fairly whistle-stop tour of this with a variety of different boats. Hopefully we've seen that a lot of the stuff is applicable to all the boats, and probably a lot of it is no different to what we've been doing previously. This may be new to some people, depending on what scheme you've operated in and whether you've been to conferences and things like that where we started to push it in. It's been around in the shipping world for a long, long time. But actually, when we talk through it, probably realise that actually what the different stages that we talked about, we do anyway. We've probably not just hung a letter in front of it. Now, these guys got a bit more confident and they're going to go off and do an exam. What do we want to see on an exam? Any examiners in the room? Do we want to see anything different to what we've just talked about? Or the same thing? We want them to manage the vessel and cruise safely and efficiently, use all the equipment on board, navigate in open water and in a port. They need an awareness of the progress along their intended route and situation awareness of other vessels and dangers. If they're ticking them boxes, they're probably going to pass their exam. Okay? If they can use some of that equipment that we've talked about and some of those strategies and things that we've just talked about to do that for them and take the pressure off them so they can relax and maybe enjoy the exam, it's probably going to be an easier debrief for you as the examiner. It's going to be a better result for them. If they're doing everything on paper still, the examiner's probably going to ask questions about whether they can use all the equipment on board effectively. Whether it was a spinnaker pole or a radar or a chart plotter, we need to see them use it. Okay? If they're doing everything on the screen and they never touch this stuff, they're probably going to get asked to do a bit of a navigation exercise just with that in front of them. If they're using both at the same time, as we've talked about through all of them different scenarios, they're probably managing the boat pretty well. They're using all the equipment and they're probably going to pass. So we don't want to teach our exam students to do anything different. I've got on board a lot of boats doing exams and they've never touched these things because the instructors told them that I want to see them using this. I do, but I want to see them using that as well. I want to see them use it effectively. I want to see alarms set on it, things like that. Because that should tell them that we're about to run aground rather than me. If I've got to tell them we're about to run aground, they're probably going to fail. Okay, so use something else, either their brain or the equipment to do it for them. So really nothing's changed, I don't think. The syllabus hasn't changed. And what we do in reality, when we go boating ourselves, is probably fairly similar to what we're trying to aim for with these guys across the different boats. The big thing we need to do is recognizing what it can do. Are we asking the right questions? If we're not going to get the right answers. If we can let it do the hard work for us, we can enjoy our boating a bit better. Are we getting the data from the right places? Is it an official source or a trusted source or a website that someone's just created in their bedroom and given it a tidal height website, which we believe? So recognizing where to get that sort of information from is quite important. If we're doing that, it's probably robust, it's probably going to work, and we're going to have a good day on the water. We're pretty much coming to the end now. Just a couple of things to point out. If you've not seen it already, check out the Airways Digital First official page. There's a few unofficial ones on there. On this one, you're probably more likely to see the stuff that's more related to what we're teaching on the water. So check that out if you've not already. A couple of QR codes. Again, this is being recorded so you can scan these when you get home if you can't work it on the screen. This is a link to the Airway Digital Facebook page, and they might work from that far at the back. The one on the left is an article that was on the website, maybe in the magazine as well, which talks through APEM in more detail, passage planning in the digital age. People still taking pictures of them. I can put them back up afterwards. Okay, if we've got this going on the screen, we're probably going to have a good day on the water. Have we got any questions? We've got some mics around if there are any. We might have a few of us answering the question, depending what the question is, whether it needs an official answer or...
Yeah, thanks very much. As a cruising instructor, without an insight as to what's going on in the classroom, on the theory class,
yes,
my interest is what skills are we going to be receiving as candidates on the practical course, in that the syllabus isn't changing as far as we can see.
Yeah.
There are hard requirements still for EP and course to steer to be demonstrated. So does that mean we're still interpreting that they must, on the practical course, be able to do the traditional navigation alongside the digital navigation, because it's a hard requirement?
Again, the syllabus hasn't changed. We need to see a bit of both going on. In terms of what they're coming out of the classroom with, Joe's probably got a bit more of an insight on that. It's a while since I taught a theory course.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that, really. You know, we would still be expecting the students to understand that course to steer, but it's about them executing it, isn't it? And it's about them getting the boat, you know, a bit bigger picture than just the course to steer. The overall aim there is to get the boat from point A to point B, taking into account the elements. So yes, they will still understand that in concept. We will have hopefully delivered that digitally first, and we will, you know, definitely expect them to use that. And actually, that's going to work better, isn't it? Who can really hand on heart say, as an instructor, they've tried to do a course to steer exercise with a student, and you've turned up where the student thought you were going to be? Because it never happens, does it? Because you move out the way of a boat, or the tide is not quite as planned. Whereas use that's updating 10 times a minute or whatever, then the chances are you're going to get to the location. So again, yeah, nothing has drastically changed in either of the syllabus. So that expectation, I would say, just to make sure that if they can do that on the electronics, is absolutely fine, with some understanding of that on the paper. Anyone else? Any others? We're nearly at coffee break. In fact, it sort of is, but there's...
Yeah, gentleman in the yellow. Robbie's coming with the microphone.
Thank you. Thank you both. That all made lots and lots of sense. Just one sentence, something that's niggling at the back of my mind. Vector charts versus raster charts, and by raster I'm talking about electronic raster charts. Is there anything that we should be saying to people about that, or what should we be saying?
We need to understand the difference between the two,
obviously.
Advantages and disadvantages of each. If we've got raster charts on our MFD that we can show them, so you can get IMRAE as a raster version to go on one of these and use it. And not surprisingly, it looks very much like the one you've probably got next to it that's printed. And they understand the differences between them. That's great. More importantly, do they understand the advantages and some of the problems we can get equally with the vector chart? So the fact that we can turn layers on and off, we can customize when we've got depth shading and depth contours and depth sounding and things showing is great. If I'm navigating through the Solent, what I don't want is every single depth sounding showing and every single contour. It's nice to see them because you can see the boat moving past them and get that visual thing that you're moving along. But actually, a depth sounding or a depth contour over 5 meters is not relevant for me if I know that I'm not going to go in less than 5 meters of depth. If I see my boat near them areas, I need to know how shallow it is. Equally, there may be times when I want that turned on. Can they do that? There may be times when that is really important to have that information on the screen, whether it's turning those sorts of things on. You can, on some of them, you can even turn off navigation aids, buoys and things like that. That's not good. But some of the views do allow those sorts of things. So they need to understand the difference between the two. If you can demonstrate it, brilliant. Most of us on these will probably have a vector chart. But the raster is essentially the piece of paper they've got in front. So you can still demonstrate a raster chart. Yeah.
I think one of the things that we need to make students aware of is that the official electronic chart of the future is going to be vector. And there's as Graham's just described, there are pitfalls that you can fall into in vector charts, because a paper chart from any country in the world, you'll understand it because it's got a very common theme, common standards and all the rest of it. From one watchkeeper to the next, your chart could look completely different. They could have changed it to depths in feet. They could have turned off all manner of different things that you don't know. So all of us need to, whether we like them or not, start getting our head into vector, because ultimately that's going to be the future. 10 years, whatever, however quickly the people upstairs can get something that we can buy. But that ultimately, in fact, the small vessel electronic chart system that was released, the standard, does not allow the use of raster charts. So that's a real indicator that it's definitely going to be vector. And at the time paper goes, raster will go as well. So we need to get into that and get used to getting the best out of it, because it's really, really powerful. It's an intelligent chart. And somebody that taught me ages ago, The problem with an intelligent chart is it needs an intelligent human. And we've got to start being those intelligent humans when it comes to vector.
Any more? Yeah. Microphone. We've got 3 people here with their hands up.
Thanks a lot. Just a really quick question. I won't name names, but a lot of the sailing schools that I work for, their vessels don't have radar on. Very simple question, really, to anybody in the room. Do we know of any, I was going to say YouTube or any sort of video or demo radar system that we can use as a teaching aid? And if anybody does, maybe catch me
Your hand went up
outside.
quickly then.
There are.
Yeah, there's a few out there, definitely. And there is actually, I think, Julie, I don't know if she's in the room, but does the RYA Resources Facebook group, and that is packed full of instructors that have taken screenshots and stuff from vessels where they have got that equipment and share them freely on that. So if you can get access to that, Julie will be able to assist with that wherever she is. She's definitely here today. Yeah, it works fantastically.
There's various softwares like the Lightmaster and things like that. If you want to start investing in stuff, equally you can go on a lot of the manufacturers' websites. Raymarine, Garmin, Simrad, Furuno, they've got some really good sections, particularly on radar. They've got some really good pages that explain how radar works, the features and functions of it, how to use it. Great example screenshots and things like that on their websites, as well as the bit trying to sell you it. There's quite a lot of useful stuff on there about how it actually works and what you can use it for.
And in fact, some of the plotters that I've used, when you come out of your actual plotter and into its demo mode, it will often demo radar on the screen anyway, albeit not live.
Even if you've not got radar, you can probably show them a radar on the screen in demo mode. Yeah.
Should we take one more? I know it's into our coffee break now, but we can hang around for
We'll
any
still be around
extras
if there's any
after.
other questions.
Yeah. But as we've got the mic there.
Thank you very much. One feature missing in most navigation apps, like Navionics and others, is they don't handle magnetic variation. From all apps I tried, there is one which is weather 4D, which handles both magnetic variation and great circle circumference, correct? Regarding the other apps, do you know of other apps moving in direction to handle this correctly so that we can teach, electronic, both magnetic and true courses?
I've seen settings on some of the apps where you can toggle between true and magnetic in the settings. Get into that maybe somewhere hidden, buried in things, because they like to show you one sort. But I've definitely seen on some of the Navionics, I think that made it, I can't remember. I've definitely seen on some of them. Remember which one?
Yeah, I can't off the top of my head, but yeah, it is possible, I think, on some, but not all, as you say. Lovely.
Thank you very much.
We'll leave it there. We'll hang around, so if anyone's got any burning questions, then come and see us.